there's a death cross incoming for Bitcoin pretty soon, and for the altcoin market, it already happened. So what does that mean for our bags? And also, let's talk a little bit about the sentiment around crypto right now by looking at some community members and the posts that they made on this channel, because things are actually looking quite good. There are a couple things that look less good, and we want to know where we are, of course, right? So let's talk about it. Welcome to the Fomo Factory. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the bell notification on, and let's get right into it. So the death cross for Bitcoin is basically where the 50 daily moving average crosses the 200 daily moving average. And it looks like this is going to happen pretty soon. And with pretty soon, I mean really pretty soon. That could be as soon as November 16, so probably in 4 days from now, we can see this death cross. A death cross sounds scary, but it is actually not always that bad. So what I did is I looked at the death crosses so far that happened in this cycle and what the result was. And it is actually pretty bullish, right? If we take a look at the previous death crosses that we had a death cross in April, and that took Bitcoin up with 65%. And I'm taking it over the big move, right? I mean, death crosses, they usually mark around the bottom. Doesn't mean that things cannot go lower in the shorter term, but overall, if you look at the bigger move that comes after it, then it's definitely not that bad. There was another death cross right here in August 2024, and that's a good example, right? Here we got the death cross, but crypto kind of, it went down, it went up, it went down, it went up, but overall it was set for a big move. And it could be because you first need a death cross in order to get a golden cross. You could say like, hey, the golden cross in this case is what really took it up, right? So it is a little patience related, and that's a hard thing, but I will give you the averages, the amount of gain and the time it took for Bitcoin to get there, and you decide what you do with it, right? And there was another death cross this cycle, and that happened in September 2023, and that was like pretty perfectly at the bottom. And what you can see, the death cross itself, it doesn't really do much, right? On the day of the death cross, we opened at $25,800 and we closed at $25,100. So even the day itself wasn't even really that volatile. And then we had a pretty decent pump. Then the golden cross came, and then we had the rest of the move, basically. So again, it's a long-term game. But this was a average, or this was a pump eventually from the cross until the real local highs of 193%. This one was 75%, and this one was 65%. If you take the average of that, then we are sitting at an average of 111%, and it has an average duration of 138 days. So it's, of course, not going to play out like that exactly. But if you just go with the average, then it would mean that Bitcoin could see $220,000 in the beginning of April. And it sounds like, whoa, but again, it's just the average, right? It could be less, it could be more, it could be around the average. We don't know. That's what we have. What is interesting, if you ask me, is that if you look at the FIP extension right there and you take it from the last cycle top all the way to the bottom, you can see that the 3.618, good morning, comes in around that level as well, which is $209,000, give or take. Right, so that could be a target. Now, beginning of April, even for the people that feel like, hey, 4-year cycle, that could be relevant, right? I mean, if we can top out in November, we can top out in December, we can top out in October, that's all relevant. April is on the longer side of things, but that would make it a 50-month cycle or 52-month cycle instead of 48. That, in my opinion, doesn't even sound like that much too extended, and it's definitely possible. Now, the interesting thing that on the altcoin market and, well, at least on others, the low cap altcoin market, it already happened. right? You can see right here that we had a dev cross which occurred yesterday, I think, on the altcoin market. Yeah, yesterday. And what you see right here is on the altcoin market, it is interesting because here, and you don't see it because I have the candle right here, but it overall always marked like the wick low, right? The wick low is marked right here on the day of the dev cross. Nevertheless, after that, it did go lower. On this one right here, it also marked the wick low basically. And you get a rally first, right? Like here, and then it eventually went lower before the bigger move up, right? Same right here. It got a rally, did go a little lower, made a new lower low right there before making the new move up. And then we had one right here. And this one also, it marked the wick low. Again, didn't go lower after that. This was basically, you know, like if you bought this one, nice, right? This was a real good one. So on the altcoin market, it's a little more extreme, it seems. It has more the wick lows. And overall, I mean, if you look back and you just bought them, right? Nice job, right? So it could be that this one was a good one for buying right now. Now, overall, we'll see how this is going to play out. I mean, again, like I said, we need the dev cross in order to get a golden cross as well. And maybe that's what's going to actually bring it all up. You see right here, we had the golden cross. We were already kind of halfway the rally, though. Maybe it means nothing. Could also be. These are just moving averages. And like, let's not put too much money only on that, right? Now, I do want to go over one specific comment on the channel because I think that everybody that gave me a not so nice comment lately is actually trying to say what this person is saying right here. And I think that this is a real good comment, actually. This is about me talking about why I think that this cycle is not over yet. And he has some valid arguments and questions right here, which we need to take a look at. So this person, he says, I tend to look at this with some concerns. I see a lot of people or KOLs claiming that the cycle is following a different set of data, aka the business cycle, or that rate cut and monetary policy is leading. It's a right translated cycle or any kind of narrative to support the idea of that the cycle is not topping out by the end of Q4. Probably because we haven't had the alt season yet that we all have been waiting for. Even when the end of QT and a rate cut is announced, nothing happens, so we find another set of data to support our desires. So my question is, how likely is it that we are all looking for a narrative that fits our interest at best, rather than having a real honest and unbiased view of what's going on? And I think that this is a real good question, actually, right? Because you see a lot of people do that, and I can say see why people think that I'm also trying to do that, right? That we basically say like, well, this is going to happen, and if it doesn't happen, we just like raise the goalposts or we change the conditions, right? Like, well, okay, that didn't happen, but we now need this, right? And I will go into what I think about this in this situation. And he says, in my view, you are saying that this time is different from what you initially believed was correct set of data to look at, but you found a new set of data that supports the desired outcome and allows you to say that this time is not different, just based on a completely new narrative. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. So again, I get where this is coming from. I see a lot of people do this. It's not my intention behind this, though. So let me explain this. I was always real vocal about saying, hey, guys, until proven otherwise, I believe in what I see, and this time is not different. One, for me, it's learning as well for everybody, right? And I always looked at the cycle, and I was like, well, end of 2013, end of 2015, end of 2021. So end of 2025, I had to convince people a long time ago already, like, this is like what I think is going to happen. And now everybody seems to believe that. So a lot of people changed to believing this. However, I changed also to not saying not believing this, But looking further than just this, right? My main reason for saying that I don't believe in the cycle only is kind of what I explained in that video as well. And there are a couple reasons. One, I've been in this euphoria stage in 2013. I sold my Bitcoin for $800. I was like, wow, double, okay, let's get rid of it. I was in 2017 printing cash with odds, and it felt unbelievable. And it felt like it was never going to end. In 2021, I also, like, it was a little more tamed than 2017, but still, it was like, if you were calling for a bear market anywhere here, people would have fucking, like, they would got mad at you, right? The euphoria was great. At this point, the euphoria is not there, and the sentiment is too bad. There are, in my opinion, now too many people that feel like, hey, it's gonna bottom, it's gonna go down, bear market. And from my experience so far, the market doesn't give us what we want. I think it's not gonna be that easy, right? Where we just say like, okay, now we have 3 data points, so we know what's gonna happen. I know that the market loves to throw the big herd a fat curveball. So that's one. Two, also, I just started to look at the cycle a little more in depth, I think, than what I did before. Because I was stubbornly saying like, well, 1, 2, 3, so 4, right? But then I started to think like, well, 3 data points. There have been a lot of indicators and a lot of things that also had 3 data points that got invalid. What makes these 3 data points so much more valid? Like, I don't think that that's how it works. But I also started to look like, hey, but why do we always top out at the end of the post-halving year? And then I was starting to talk to a colleague of mine, K-Dub, and he was looking more and more into the business cycle and into the actual liquidity. And yeah, Bitcoin is money, it's liquidity, right? So it makes a lot more sense than just saying like, well, there's just a month. So the sense making was there. But then I started to look at it myself a little closer, and I was like, well, isn't it kind of coincident that the business cycle also always topped out at the end of the post-halving year, right? We had in 2013, we had the business cycle topping out right here. We had the end of 2021 where it, 17, sorry, where it topped out, and in 2021 where it topped out. Right? This whole area, this area, this area. And that happened to be where Bitcoin topped out. Right now, for me, it's hard to believe like, hey, 3 times for Bitcoin only topping out. That's a trend, that's a cycle, that should be like how it continues. But 3 times on this one is a coincidence. Why? Like, this is just as many 3 times, right? So I just feel like, okay, let's at least be open-minded to the idea that the accuracy, as what I've shown for now, is exactly the same. The narrative makes more sense, in my opinion, for this. Because again, this is real liquidity, right? Companies ordering new products because people order new products from these companies. And why is that? Because there is demand, there is actual money that they can spend on it, right? That's the whole idea of the business cycle. And if companies are not ordering a lot, like right now, for example, it just means that there's no demand, there is no money, and this could have something to do with the tariffs, of course, like whatever narrative you want to put it, or the fact that the rates are still really high, or that it was a QT season so far, whatever, right? But there's no liquidity in the system, and businesses, they react to that, right? And therefore, everything related to the business cycle is following that as well. So that narrative is, in my opinion, like, yeah, duh. And like the narrative of like, well, November, yeah, it's like, what? But why November, right? Like, let's ask more. So this is already showing to me like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. But also, if you look further into it, and that's where I think that's my mistake for not doing it sooner. But if I look at Bitcoin at the 4 year cycle, right? It is not really a 4 year cycle, right? Because we also topped out in 2011 in June, right? That's like 2 years earlier than, like, that's not 4 years at all, right? And I was always under the impression like, well, Bitcoin was new, so it wasn't really a full cycle yet. But then when I overlaid this on the business cycle again, I saw like, well, it is kind of nuts, right? That exactly where Bitcoin topped out in 2011, that's also where the business cycle topped out. So then I was like, wow, okay, so the business cycle is now more accurate when it comes to tops than the 4 year crypto cycle. And the narrative makes more sense. So I feel like, isn't it just kind of stupid to only look at Bitcoin and not what drives the liquidity behind it? And then, when I started to look deeper into it, I was also like, hey, here the business cycle got up again, and here it tanked again, right? Until like August 2012. So shouldn't like Bitcoin react to that in that case as well? But again, when I went back to August 2012, you can see that that's exactly here where Bitcoin had a massive 50% crash. So this showed me like, okay, the correlation is way more accurate than the 4 year cycle. Plus, I started to look, that made me wonder, right? Like, okay, then why do we stick to the 4 year cycle so much? Like, what makes it 4 years? Right? For example, the way that you measure cycles is bottom to bottom again, right? Well, if we take the bottom, right, and we take it to this bottom right here, this was 1,200 days, right? 1,200 days. Well, everybody does a little math, right? They know that that's not 4 years. They see August 2015 till December 2018. So the tops are not every 4 years. The bottom is not every 4 years. Then what else? Well, we have the halvings. But then I looked at like, well, November 2012, July 2016. Also, so that made me like, well, there's nothing about crypto that says, well, 4 year, 4 year, 4 year. Nothing, actually. Only the last three tops. But again, that makes me go back to the business cycle, and that's like, yeah, but it's not that the business cycle follows Bitcoin, right? That's not the case. This thing exists since the 1950s or whatever, right? No. Then what is it? Coincidence? I don't know. If that was the case, then it didn't mark the top here and the crash right here in between. So that's the reason that I feel like I'm not saying that this time is different. What I'm saying is actually, I was looking at the 4 year cycle all the time while I was actually not looking why Bitcoin topped out. And now I'm looking at the why. So that was a learning process for me. And actually, it might not be different. Look, for crypto, it is different, right? Crypto will then maybe top out, I don't know, August 2026, whatever. Just saying something, right? But according to the business cycle, it is nothing different, because here we topped in 2009, right? Here we topped in 2004. You could even say 2003. So this was 5-6 years, right? And that happened many times before, but crypto just didn't experience that yet because it didn't exist right here. Right, so maybe people are now looking at it like, well, then it is going to be different. It is not like gonna be different. Maybe it's just gonna be the same, but we haven't seen that yet. I'm not saying all of this because I'm feeling like, well, because otherwise we don't have an alt season, and that's what I want. Of course, it's what I want, but then again, if anything, like Bitcoin can top out right now if it wants to, like, buy, no problem. Because what we already seen as well is that even if Bitcoin tops out, and we look at the alt season chart, right? And we overlay Bitcoin on it, then you can see that even though Bitcoin topped out in 2017, that's where alt season actually started, right? The second leg, it was a two-legged alt season basically. Bitcoin topped out right here. And this is exactly where, bam, we had alt season. So I'm not saying like, well, Bitcoin goes on longer, because I hope it does, and therefore we get an alt season, otherwise we don't. If it tops out right now, I'm still like, oh, then we could still get an alt season. It's what happened right here as well. There are more like reasons why I think so, that it's not over yet, but it's mostly macro again, the business cycle. Like, therefore I feel like if you believe in the 4-year cycle, because 3 times is a trend, the business cycle has more than these 3 times of trending, right? So then you should like even believe in this more. But I think that most people don't look at this, or I don't know about it, or I don't know. But for me, it's pretty clear. If 3 times is a trend for Bitcoin, then these same 3 times, plus the time before, plus the mid-cycle crash right there, plus the sense that it makes, yeah, then I'm like, okay, why still look at only 4-year cycles? Yeah, and then again, like I said, we have the sentiment. Sentiment like sucks right now. On its own, I could see that why we stop while the sentiment is bad, and then we just don't get a brutal bear market maybe. But combining these things, and also if you add on top the technical indicators, all the top indicators, every one of them, like there are, I can look for 30, and there are maybe 2 that say like, well, be careful. The rest is just like far from flashing. And it could be that they are all wrong, but like in the last cycle, they were all wrong, right? But they were all wrong because they marked the top 2 early. We at least got the pump that made them flash, right? And therefore we didn't get the flash in the second pump, because the revival candle basically just wasn't hard enough compared to the crash that we had like not too long before. But this time there's no flash at all. And I can see, like, if you put all these things together, I'm like, yeah, but it kind of makes sense, right? Because it's just like simply not there yet. And then indeed, alt season. Yeah, if we believe in the cycle, so far alt season is part of the same cycle. Well, we also did not have that. And it somewhat makes sense. Most people say like, well, that's an altcoin problem. We don't get an alt season anymore, yada, yada. And look, I'm not ruling anything out. But if I look at this, then I'm like, okay, but I think I know why it didn't happen yet. Because if you look at the Russell against the S&P, it's basically low caps versus high caps from the stock market, right? This looks the same as our alt season chart, right? If we overlay our alt season chart right here, you see the pump in 2021, and it now just only goes down with occasionally a pretty decent correlated dead cat bounce. So this shows also to me, right, that this is macro related, or it's all really a big fat coincidence, but this is too much coincidence for me. I don't believe in like so much coincidence. But this also shows to me like, wow, if this was only altcoins going down and the low cap stocks were doing fine, then okay, maybe this is a crypto thing. But this shows to me like, well, also the macro, it's in the same boat right here, right? And that makes the whole business cycle even more relevant and accurate to me. So therefore, I feel like, well, let's look further. And we know that in crypto, there has to be max pain. And if I'm adding it all up, I'm like, well, the max pain is probably going to be this time. And last times, it was everybody euphoric, market going down, fuck everybody, right? And there were a few people who probably thought like, let's sell. And these are the few small winners. right? Now it starts to feel like everybody is at least thinking about this, considering this, or debating this, or scared, or already out. And I feel like, well, in this case, the max pain is probably in that case going to be that people think, well, I figured it out, I sell. And the market just shows like, it has nothing to do with the 4-year cycle, wrecked, right? And I think that in that case, there are, again, a few people who maybe look further. And I hope that I'm one of them that's right about that. But in my opinion, based on what I just showed, it makes all the sense to me. And that these people are going to be the few winners. So that's the reason, right? That I feel like, yeah, this is, so it's not based on what I want, right? If I like feel, if I really see that the cycle is over, and if I have the confirmation, and if it makes all the sense in the world, then I don't care what I want. I'm gonna just get out, right? Then nice ride, fuck it, done for this cycle. But in this case, I'm like, nah, I look what I think is going to happen. Based on that, I place my bets, right? In that case, being in the market, and then the market going up is what I want. It's not like, hey, this is what I want. So I place my bets there, and then I try to look for narratives that like hopefully suit that, because look, I'm only wrecking myself with that. And I've been slightly longer in the market to have the experience that that's not the right way to do it. So, valid question. I hope you find this a valid answer as well. So that's about my thoughts about the cycle. So again, if you ask me like, is this a lengthening cycle? Look, in crypto terms, yes. In macro terms, no. Macro has done this before, but crypto just wasn't around to follow that yet. So it will be different in somewhat kind of a way, but actually it isn't. So that's my thought about that. My thought about the dev cross. I want to leave it here for now. Long video. Sorry for that, but thanks for watching. Let me know down below what you think. Like, I know that there are many people that say like, "Wow, you will be wrong." Like, and I feel like, okay, let's not to be much on that side, and let's not be too much on that side. I consider them both as well, and I think that it's only hurting yourself if you feel like, nope, this is what's gonna happen, right? Look, we're no DeLoreans. We don't know. We're not from the future. So let's try to just place our bets on what we think is most logic. And if you feel like, nah, everything you just showed, I don't agree, it's all, I don't know, coincidence, whatever, and I believe in only Bitcoin for your cycle, then fine, consider DCing out right now and hope for the best. Do consider that if it plays out the way I'm thinking, and it does go up, always consider like, can I handle that? Do I mind being on the sideline? Or do I have a plan to get back in without buying the top, right? Consider that at least, right? Because being on the sideline, yeah, that's what's gonna wreck people if they don't have a plan, because they thought like, I am gonna be right no matter what. I have my backup plan as well. I'm always in cash, for example. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Like the video. If you like the video, subscribe, turn the bell notification on, and I'll see you in the next one.